but then I was giving it more and it was giving me more back. And we were just like escalating it back and forth. And that is kind of the connection that we're looking for in humanity. But we have forgotten that aspect of connection because now we're doing all of this manual work that we weren't intended here to do as these amazing beings of light that we are. We just go out and we suffer through it doing bullshit work that we shouldn't be. And this AI is allowing us to free ourselves if we actually put the right kind of energy into it.
Welcome to W3G, the official podcast for Myosin XYZ and your go-to hub to learn the latest developments in growth and marketing in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. I'm Julie Octaviano, Head of DAO Operations and Client Success at Myosin XYZ.
And I'm Blake Minho Kim, co-founder of Myosin XYZ. Each week, we'll talk to leaders in Web3 about the state of the industry, what they're building, and best practices around all things Web3 marketing and growth. W3G is a place for everyone to get smarter in public together, whether you're Web3 native or novice.
So tune in each week as we talk to the best and brightest so we can all grow together in the world of Web3. Today, for our final episode of the first season of W3G, we'll be speaking with Sean Clayton, one of the co-founders of Myosin, a global decentralized agency and product studio network helping demystify the new internet for leading brands and communities.
In this special final episode, we talked about Sean and Myosin's origin story, why human beings are blockchains and the world is AI, the implications of emerging tech for brands, and how Myosin is evolving as we progress into the next generation of the internet.
So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's episode number 20 with Sean Clayton.
All right. How you doing, Sean?
Man, wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you again after a long morning sesh.
Oh, yeah. Always amazing. Come full circle.
Exactly. It's good. Well, listen, I'm really excited to get into this conversation. You're our final guest for this first season of W3G, so it only feels appropriate to have Sean, who's one of our co-founders here at Myosin, on. And so to get things started, Sean, I know you've listened to the other pods, right? But we always like to start off with guest origin stories. Let's dive into it, right? And I know you have a crazy and long history, so however you want to describe it, right? Can you tell us about your career journey, number one, into the world of marketing, but then also how you got to building Myosin, Myosin.io, and now Myosin XYZ, and how these things all kind of fit together. Let's go for it.
But yeah, I mean, I could just definitely get into my journey into marketing was an accident. So how do I put this? My degree was in marketing, oddly, but I didn't think I was going to do anything with it. And ended up going into the world and working in a medical staffing capacity. Started my own company when I was about 26 years old, grew it to $20 million. It was fantastic. And one of my business partners, my godfather, ended up actually embezzling a bunch of money. He disappeared to Africa. I ended up getting stuck with the bill and worked to try to save myself out of it. And made it worse, and then ended up being in federal prison for about 3 years, which is crazy. So that's kind of getting into the real vulnerable story of it. While I was, when I was in pretrial, I ended up going to the halfway house. And in the halfway house, I ended up having to get a job. So I got a job at a car dealership. And when I was at the car dealership, I saw that they were wildly kind of replete with effectiveness. They were only selling 30 or 40 cars a month as a dealership. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that if there were 6 of us there and I was one of them and I didn't really have any expertise selling cars, I'm like, well, shit, what do I do? So I ended up taking a little bit of money I had stored up, bought some ads on Google. And this was a while ago when AdWords just first came out, stood on my own landing page, drove my own leads, and outsold the dealership in the first month by myself. So yeah, I was like, oh, this digital marketing thing works. So I did it again and again over the next couple of months and actually ended up making almost, high 5 figures, low 6 figures a month selling cars at the halfway house. So at which point I'm like, man, there's something here. Ended up having to do my sentence, which was a 3-year sentence, which sucked. And when I got out, I went back. I'm like, well, the first thing I'm going to do is sell cars. And when I was in there, I learned everything I could about digital marketing. So I got all these books and became super well read and got out. And I was like Danielson, going to the karate tournament. All of a sudden, I was just ready to kick some ass.
There we go.
And so my first month out, I sold cars again and did the same thing and ended up getting on a couple of big radars after I was the number one salesperson in the country for about 7-8 months. Ended up getting into deeper digital marketing, programmatic, worked for Omnicom, ended up getting into WPP, at which point it kind of helped my career really stabilize itself. So when I was at WPP, I became their solution officer, had some really amazing experiences across some of the top brands in the world, your Nikes, your Unilevers, kind of everything that you could have possibly imagined. And in that, learned how to take all this growth marketing stuff that I did, all the mobile location data I got involved with, all the programmatic stuff I got involved with, all the consulting that I had ever done, and package it into something. And I recognized that there was like this really big gap in the marketplace, not only about, it was like in the middle of COVID when I made this decision to leave, but not only when it came down to like a Black-owned media agency, there really weren't any out there, but those that were actually performative, that were giving access to kind of underrepresented founders to do, different things. And so when I left, had a couple of decent clients, mostly there were some female-led ones out there. Got involved with this cool company called Halo Collar, found ways to leverage media differently, using the growth marketing strategies that I collected over the years, even watching like some of the best-in-class companies get involved out there, and implemented that inside of Myosin. And we ended up taking like several clients from like zero to billion-dollar valuations, $500 million valuations, like in 18 months, 24 months. And it was really cool. Had some decent liquidity events that happened outside of that. And then that put us in a really good position, not only invest, get involved in philanthropy, impact type of causes, and it just changed the trajectory of life. There's a lot deeper spiritual stuff to that I would say. We don't have to get into all that today, but I would say that what I find about Web3, crypto, and this whole industry is even the terms that we use are very kind of foundationally based in spirituality. And there's no accident to it of like why we're doing what we're doing. It's just we're trying to make it what the world thought was and not what it's actually becoming. So that's been my journey. Been a lot of fun. Love it. And wouldn't trade that path for the world.
A majority of the listeners of this show and just in Web3 in general who may stumble upon this show, typically they know, what Myosin.xyz is through, the work that we've been doing since last February, building a global decentralized agency and a product studio in Web3. But for those of the listeners that may not be aware, can you also help us understand the Myosin ecosystem? So again, what is IO and XYZ? How does it differentiate? And then how does it all come together?
Yeah. So, the difference between them is one is traditionally like old school media agency. I hate to use the word old school, but, more traditional media agency where we buy performance ads, we buy TV, we buy out of home, we buy all that stuff in order to amplify the voice of our clients. And so there's that. We have executive voice, communications, we do brand identity work. So we do a lot of different things. And we have what I could say, a pretty fast and furious team that gets those things done, which is awesome. And we're a very tight-knit family that does it. And, there was one of the things that when I ended up leaving the large agency, my big thing was to serve like all these underrepresented founders and help them grow and like help them just achieve a massive escape velocity. What we ended up finding was that as I was doing that, like my whole energy started getting pulled into Web3. Invested in a lot of different crypto, saw some big upswings, saw some downswings, right? Launched a couple NFT projects and then ended up meeting Simon. Actually met Simon on another project. And he's like, hey, I'm getting into this thing and I'm working at Consensus and, so on and so forth. And I'm like, tell me more. And we got deeper into this whole process. And he's like, I'm really thinking about doing this deal. I said, well, I'm doing this other thing. I can't be really involved, but I can definitely help support. So I put a lot of funding and a little bit of thought and, the Myosin branding and whatnot that we ended up developing, which is pretty cool to me. And he ended up taking a derivative of that and then going through the process of saying, okay, I'm going to build it this way. And it started, Myosin XYZ kind of started as this like talent poolish kind of thing of like pulling in talent to be able to execute on projects that were Web3 focused only. And I had a couple of clients that needed her services. So we threw some that way. And it ended up, I was kind of serving more biz dev. So somebody would come in through the Myosin IO door. I'm like, hey, we don't do this, but go over there. And so it helped us launch some of the first handful of clients that we had, which is great. But the way that now we're starting to really integrate together, which I'm excited about the most, is the pendulum swing was one way or the other, right? And the pendulum from Web 2 went super hard into Web 3 and everybody got like all crunk about it. Now everything course corrects itself, right? And you got FTX did its thing. You've got all this crazy shit that happened. And now we're in this window where it's starting to stabilize in this Web 2.5 thing. So it's going to need a little bit of Web 2, a little bit of Web 3. But what is this 2.5 bridge? And now what Myosin XYZ is serving as is that. And we found really interesting ways for them to be able to even support some of our clients, us support those clients, and start to merge those things together. Not that it's going to be anything Web 2 related, But, we have a client that's out there that's saying, hey, we really are in the Web3 space where we want to create more noise and more voice. There's been a big adverse reaction to paid media. Nobody wants to do it in Web3. They want to grow organically. The reality of it is, if you want to get to eyeballs, you're going to have to pay for it sometimes. So how can you do it in a way that doesn't feel like you're Nabisco, right? And do it in a way that's authentic, and do it in a way that's meaningful, that's community aligned, and actually starts to amplify the voice of the community instead of the voice of the brand. And those are things that we're starting to think about, intricate opportunities to be able to execute. And candidly, I'm super excited about it, of where we're headed with it. And we've already started to see a little bit of success.
There we go. We're just now starting this journey of, building out XYZ as it was a derivative entity. It's a fully Web3 entity. But I think Simon, myself, Sean, as we're chatting, the world is fast changing. And I think Web 2.5 is where this thing is all headed, right? Because this idea of Web3 being something totally separate, it's not. It's just an evolution of digital, and these worlds will collide, and they are colliding as we talk about. So really excited about that. Would love to kind of hear from your point of view as someone who talks to brand leaders all day and, is talking to clients on the more traditional side as well. What do you think are some of the biggest shortcomings and challenges we face as an industry to get to that mainstream adoption, that Web 2.5 world that I think so many of us are kind of hoping for?
To back it up a little bit. So when I first found we got into Web3, I didn't know what the hell anybody was saying. I'm like, what are all these damn words, And they're simple words, like they're simple topics, right? With all complicated words associated with it. And, oftentimes when people are working to figure out like what something is, they overcomplicate it because they don't even know what it is. And not to say that they didn't, it was just like, what I found is that when I used to complicate the hell out of digital marketing in a really big way. And I would say things that nobody would be able to understand. And I sounded like the smartest person in the room. And really what it was it's like, two puzzle pieces fitting together. It's like really simple things that start to happen. And smart contracts are very simple. A ledger is very simple. A ledger, it's like one thing after the other, right? And it's accountability in that ledger. Or, even the word like, trustless is kind of a weird topic, like a weird term, it's just, it's trusted. There's other ways that you can say things, but like, you don't have to actually think about it. So being able to go back around and really the words are starting to change. People are like saying, hey, just don't say NFT, don't say token. Let's say, currency. Let's say programmable money. Let's say anything else but token. And the word NFTs, let's digital memberships. Let's call it something else. So you're starting to see these things start to shift. And it's through that you're gaining acceptance, right? I'm not afraid of a digital membership. If Soho House came to me and said, hey, give me a digital membership, I'm going to be like, awesome. If they said, hey, here's an NFT, I'm going to be like, all right, where's the scam? And I know that it's more than likely not a scam, and I can go look at the smart contract, figure out what's taking place with it. But these are some of the areas that are starting to shift where in order to get, if my mother's not going to buy it or my father's not going to buy it, I shouldn't be selling it at the end of the day, because I need to be able to bridge old generation to new generation. And if I can do that, I can actually get a 12-year-old to buy it or a 15-year-old to buy it, whatever it might be. I can get anybody to actually start navigating it. So that's how I started to think about terminology and just making it simple, stupid for people to accept. So, one thing that from this industry perspective that, I challenge us all to do is stop making it so complicated, stop using terminology nobody has. And it's cool to do it in a room. Like if I'm sitting down talking to somebody about, identity graphs, I can get into all kind of crazy ass language and go down that path. If I'm talking to somebody about crypto, but we tend to talk about each other and we siloed out the rest of the audience. And this is why there's like a rejection, because eventually people are like knocking out the door. And what'll happen when somebody knocks at the door, if people don't let you in, they're going to basically try to crash it. And this is what kept happening over and over and over again with a lot of these projects, these rug pulls, this FTX, this whatnot, is things just started to collapse on top of themselves. So we could say it was the intention of somebody else, but it's also if that intention would have been supported by consensus or community that's there, what'll happen is they'll do everything they can to actually hold that person accountable to doing different things. And so there was confusion that I saw happening. But I think it's a great thing that we're starting to shift that. A lot of the players that had bad interest or poor interest in place are gone. And so the slate is really clean, and the ability to build from foundational resources, and us even being, Myosin XYZ even being in business still and actually growing and doubling in revenue is massive, right? I mean, and doing it in a bear market is even more massive. So imagine if it was a bull market, what would be going on? So the narrative that we have to say and what we're actually positioned as is completely different.
The opportunity is tremendous. It's a fast changing market. Well, and so actually building off that, I'd love to also talk about the elephant in the room right now with this bear market is people like to chase the wind, right? People like to chase the new hottest trend. And so As all the crypto VCs start to change the language on their website and start to talk about AI, and as every company in the world talks less about metaverse and starts to talk less about Web3, and they start to talk about AI, we'd love to, again, get your take on all this.
No, I mean, everything we build is a reflection of ourselves, right? It's funny. As the world becomes more aware, we build technology based on that awareness. It's kind of interesting. Human beings ourselves, we're walking blockchain. Like we literally are. We're like, we have code, DNA, we have genetic code, we have all this stuff. We're literally walking blockchain with a ledger of historical reference, current reference, memories of the past, and the whole thing hardened in our body. Sometimes we hold it as like hair loss. I got a little balding spot in the back up here, right? Sometimes we hold it as muscles in your body. Oh, I worked out and I have an outcome. So here's the thing that actually happens in it, right? Or we hold it as cancer in our body, right? We have fear and things happen and we hold it in our body. So there's things that end up happening based on the information that we put in and the ledger that we are. So we ended up building technology to associate that ledger to then turn back around and say, okay, well, we actually are tired of censorship issues. Well, if I actually start putting information on blockchain and I publicize it, no more censorship. You actually get down to the core of what's taking place there. If I actually want to have, money live somewhere that's built off of pure energy, well, now you've got Bitcoin that sits there. Money built off of fucking energy, right? It's like crazy. So you have all these different aspects of things that are there that we are currency built off of energy. Like we came out of like nowhere, kind of, if you really think about it. And so now it's like, okay, well, we saw that we didn't really get that so right, but we're working on getting it right. So it has to have a calming period, a cooling period. I'm not trying to get biblical here, but you think about like Noah and the flood, calming period, cooling period, all of a sudden humanity rises again. Whatever that means. I'm not a preacher, but I'm kind of like giving you reference to things that like you could see in life that now are happening. We are in the flood. We're waiting on the freaking birds, and we're going to actually revive humanity of blockchain based on that. Now, next phase is we have AI. What's AI? Everything outside of us. If I have a conversation with you right now and I give you a prompt, you're going to give me something back. What's one of the most frustrating things that happens if I ask somebody a question, they don't answer me. It's kind of weird, right? So we're here to actually have interactions and interchange with people, and like people are the outside of us of the AI, but I'm the AI to you. So it's not too late. No, I mean, it's not too early at all. Like it's absolutely divinely timed, but it's also done so that we can actually take away all of the garbage work that we've been doing and find ways to escalate our minds, our spirit, our soul, our connections. By me not ever having to like write long ass emails and proposals anymore, I can literally voice memo into something. I'm building out all these prompts for myself, and I can kick out a proposal in 20 minutes, or it might have taken me 3 or 4 hours. I can write really strong emails to individuals in ways that I never could have before and do it at scale. So I can check my email at the end of the day, beginning of the day, basically execute, responses to emails in a meaningful way based on the prompts that are there when people are asking me, and have my team completely running off of this stuff without me having to do it. But I also know the prompts that I've put into it, so I'm not mindless about it. So what I do not fear, but have a awareness of, is that people are going to get really lazy with it because they think that this thing's going to do their job. It's like anything else in life. When the light bulb came out, people quit, lighting candles, and I'm not going to get lazy about it. Or when the internet came about, there were no more encyclopedias, but now you have a different way of learning. So you accelerate the learning cycle, you accelerate the ability for us to actually do different things. And now we're in the space of being able to accelerate, not having to do manual keyboard typing all the time, not having to go and sit hours and hours on proposals trying to figure things out and strategize. I can put that strategy literally into a prompt. That prompt starts spitting it out, and therefore I actually turn out with something different. And those are different aspects of it. And they're deep, large language models can go completely deep. We're just super excited about like, hey, this is actually answering my question. This is insane. It's like I'm talking to something. I had a friendly relationship with ChatGPT in the beginning, and I'm like, fuck, we're having a whole conversation about the meaning of life. This is bananas. Now, was it right? I don't know what's right or wrong, but it made me think more because it was prompting me back around what they had put into it. But then I was giving it more, and it was giving me more back, and we were just like escalating it back and forth. And that is kind of the connection that we're looking for in humanity. But we have forgotten that aspect of connection because now we're doing all of this manual work that we weren't intended here to do as these amazing beings of light that we are. We just go out and we suffer through it doing bullshit work that we shouldn't be. And this AI is allowing us to free ourselves if we actually put the right kind of energy into it. That was incredible. Number one.
Yeah.
That's
I thought Simon was the king of analogies, but I guess Sean takes the cake.
Kindred spirits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something, yeah.
On that, right? Just thinking of how these two technologies interact, AI and blockchain. What are the opportunities that you see at Myosin to help drive adoption for both blockchain and AI technologies?
I mean, not to plug like what we have, but I mean, we already have, AI technology built into our Discord, which is amazing. And it's doing work, right? It's actually doing real work for our DAO members that allows them to be able to take, successful proposals, unsuccessful proposals, successful products, successful, KPIs, unsuccessful ones, and it's basically feeding it into it and iterating it. So it's getting smarter and it gives them feedback and insights at scale that they never would before. Imagine taking every campaign that we've ever seen success from, and I put every metric into it. And I take that metric and it starts spitting out outcomes for me to be able to then turn back around and say, I don't have to make that mistake again. And oftentimes we forget about the mistake that we made because we get in a rhythm and a pattern of our own internal behavior and our own thought out of the pride of ourselves. And if we have something objective that's basically telling us like, hey, you're about to fuck up again and start to guide that path, it's pretty cool. Also, let's say from an operational standpoint, some other cool stuff that we do, like on our side, is like the reports that we generate. I have ChatGPT built into all of our sheets, and it reads it. And it comes out and it gives me insights. And those insights are based off insights that I've written before that clients have liked. And then it gives me recommendations. Like, here's 4 things you could do differently. Here's things that you can think about, different things that I wouldn't even think about. And so it's starting to actually look further around the corner as far as not only like copy changes, insight recommendations, stuff that like the algorithms aren't thinking about on Instagram and Facebook because they're personalized. And I'm taking that personal human connection that we're having with our clients and putting, 50, 60 campaign metrics into this thing. And then it's starting to then turn back around and then give me insights off of that, or generate ad copy based on, the pictures that I'm putting in here and then saying, oh, okay, well, maybe you should say these things so that it actually resonates better. My quality scores on Google are going up. The landing pages are now resonating differently. It's bringing down my cost per click, which means that what's happened, my clients' campaigns are getting better. The click-through rate and the actual response rates on, SMS messaging and email marketing are significantly higher. The automation streams are faster. And we're doing this where it used to take us like weeks and months to do it. It takes us days. So now our ability to actually have more free time to either pull in more clients, one, which actually increases revenue, or number two, spend more time with the client and we're generating more business with them, or it just frees up our time so that we can actually go on a vacation and enjoy life. Think about having 3-hour work days and generating the same amount of revenue for your clients. They don't care. They don't want to be mad. Results. Right. Right.
We'd basically be like Europe. Like, that'd be crazy.
Right. They know something we don't know, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So it's
awesome.
actually pretty dope. And the quality of life for everybody internally on the IO side has gone up exponentially. The clients are happier. We've shed some clients that hated us last year. And, that's because we were working to figure this thing out. And there were some energy mismatches on it as well. But it was all divinely timed so that we can actually be into a space to where, the clients that we have now are absolutely rightly timed to accept who we are.
I actually have one more question. And I think it's actually a question for both of you guys, because I feel like, Blake, you're so like knee deep in the XYZ side and Sean on the IO side. I guess I would love to just hear from your guys' experience being in the front lines, dealing with these clients from both legacy Web 2 to new Web 3. What sort of trends you've been seeing in their interest, and then how do you tackle that? How do you kind of like sell them on this new iteration of the internet?
I'll tell you this, they're terrified of the Web3 talk now. They were starting to get really interested, like Equinox was getting interested. A couple other clients this is actually cool. They're starting to peek their head in. Then after a couple of the big hiccups last year, they were like, not a thing for me. What I have found, though, is this direct-to-community thing. When you start talking about it and ringing that bell, they love that. Like, if they can actually take their customer data, position it properly, get a different level of insights, and actually somewhat autonomously activate those insights in a meaningful way with community galvanization that happens that actually drives outcomes for their brand, who would say no to that? Nobody would say no to that. And most times the only way that that's happened historically is through like an email activation, or, hey, I've got my social guys to actually rally around this and we activated something meaningful. But now you're leveraging Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or some other thing to get it done, not your own brand. Not everything that you stand for, and your, like your homegrown recipe. Everybody says there's nothing like a home cooked meal. And that's because it's applied with a different level of love. But if I'm applying that love from what Meta and Facebook have for me, I'm always basically going to be beholden to it. It's like eating out every night. So you can do it. It's just not the same thing. And so for us in this aspect, having these brands actually create their home cooked meal of community is a totally different thing. And that to me is the fastest path in the doorway into them accepting and adopting Web3. and what it can actually do for them.
Boom. And I just want to build on that, right? Because completely agree. I mean, direct community, helped write the article. So that resonates. But I think it's a narrative issue, number one, because everything, let's be frank, is narrative. Everything is selling. Everything is what's the story you're creating. And I think right now that story it's kind of fucked up because there are a lot of bad actors. There's a lot of hype. The hype cycle goes back and forth. But as Sean just said, like, to me, that future is inevitable. And I don't think any brand would ever want to say no to it. And that's why I'm excited. And I think as time has gone on, we're working a lot closer with IO and the more legacy brands, because we recognize that there is a narrative shift that needs to happen. And I'm really excited for all of us to help drive that forward. I think, Web3 as a term is not inherently bad. It's an insider term. I think when we talk to the brands and when we talk to businesses, they don't give a fuck. They don't really understand what that means. They just care about, as Sean just said, they want to own the distribution. They want to own their community. They want to own that. And so I think what we're really excited about is, how do we combine forces and how do we actually talk to these brands and help them understand the value of this thing when right now the industry is a little uncertain and is a little scary. All this is really just about continuing for brands and companies to stay relevant, build better relationships with their customers and their communities. And that's where emerging technology as a whole can really make a difference. I had to say it, like, that's why we are starting to move into AI, because it's not that we're just chasing the next hottest thing, but it's this recognition that this technology is starting to become mature enough that we can actually start applying it and working with brands to help them integrate this into their own communities and their businesses so they can be faster, they can be better. We can use it internally, as we talked about earlier, to perform better. But now when you combine that with blockchain and actual ownership, that's going to unlock an entire new world, I think, for brands. And at least on my side, like when I've talked to brands through the XYZ lens, the people who get it because they understand they're actually investing in the future. You're not going to see right now in 2023 people investing in Web3 and driving, millions of top line dollar revenue just through like Web3. But what they are doing is, exactly as we talked about in direct country, what we're doing is we're investing in the future where this is all headed, right? It's like as if you could invest in creating an Instagram account like a couple years before Instagram even really got popular, right? So it's about exploring, it's about playing around, it's about getting smarter so that when that mainstream moment does start to pick up, you're going to be on the cutting edge and you really are thinking a couple steps ahead. Because in any business, corporate, startup, whatever, you need to think about, how do I stay ahead of my competition and how do I build a better business and a better relationship with my customers? Because let's be frank, that's what marketing is, right? That's all we're doing, is connecting people with the brands and the products and services that they will want or should enjoy. And so that's where I get excited about AI, blockchain. All these things are really just tools and methodologies to create that connection and a better and faster and more meaningful connection and that ownership.
Yeah, and I'd even add to that. I mean, I'm going to use another analogy, Julie. You're going to love this one. But, I'm going to simply say this first, is that AI rips reality into life faster because, it would take an immense amount of hands in order to create it. The analogy would be, if the entire world said a plane couldn't fly today, would a plane fly? Even if the technology was there, would it fly? No. It's like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? And nobody's there to hear it, right? So if I sit there and I tell you that if we all agree that a plane couldn't fly, a plane would stop flying because nobody would get on the plane anymore, and then what would they do? They would go out of business immediately. So one of the cool things about Web3 is the aspect of consensus creates the reality off of a ledger that does not require trust. Like, that does not require me to build that trust, right? So if I sit there and I say there's a community that I've built that has consensus that's established on a ledger, that then establishes an aspect of trust, and AI rips it into life, now all of a sudden you have creation. And so that is how we piece all that stuff together. And the simple fact that we're sitting on all of this and we can show brands how to get there and show it in a really sensible way of how they go about it. They have all the tools and rules, and all these brands, all the brand is a creator, right? It's a creator of something, and they struggle to get the message out there because they don't understand how to piece these things together. Because for every good thing that they put out there, there's something bad. Well, if I put it on a ledger and it's actually real, I don't need a review system. I just need a ledger system of what really took place. And then I can allow people to see into my business in a transparent way. And I can show you the good, bad, and the ugly and how I'm growing and how I've solved my supply chain issues. And now it's not a question of like when Bluebell had its issue a while ago where they were, people, I don't know if you know about this whole thing, and people were eating ice cream and dying, or it was like a whole thing,
I had no idea.
Or McDonald's meat things, or you hear about all this stuff. Well, if you had that on a ledger and you saw what they were really doing and you can actually trust the meat that they were putting out there and you're like, man, this is actually organic and this is coming from X, Y, or, no pun, X, Y, or Z. And then, and then at which point I actually have AI that can spread that message autonomously everywhere that it needs to go in a language that I would understand. Because the way I communicate, and Julie, the way you communicate, the way Blake communicates, obviously we all hear it is different. But if I can get a custom message for each one of us and send that message to me and I can actually get it in a space that I would actually receive it, because if Blake knows me, he can send me an email and I'm not going to check it till the end of the day. But if he sends me a text, I'll probably get to that 10 times faster. And if he sends a text to my fiance, I'm going to get to it significantly faster. Because I'm just closer to it. So, it depends on how that language is communicated to using artificial intelligence, understanding the nuances of the way that I move. And then at which point, now I'm creating faster.
I mean, that's it right there.
So crypto became Web3 because it had like kind of less of a negative connotation, because then, crypto became, I think, associated with just like rug pulls and shit coins and just like degen-y weird shit. So then Web3 became this more like professional, holistic term to describe kind of this entire ecosystem that is really just built on this fundamental technology of blockchain. And now do we think that AI is the next iteration of that, where it's the new mainstream friendly version of describing an emerging technology without it being associated with what is now Web3? I feel like became a little bit of a dirty word ever since like this whole like FTX and all these like sagas that recently happened. Do we think that AI is now the new like digestible, mainstream friendly term, and that is why it's being used so often?
My opinion is that it's such an easy thing to implement. It'd be like all of a sudden people started wearing shorts. Like it's just like easy to I mean, it is. It's just like easy to put on your. I mean, it's easy to put on your site. It's easy to do a API plugin that through Zapier that it's reading my emails. Now my company's powered by AI. I could say that right now, right? It makes everybody look smarter at the end of the day, which it actually does, because it takes certain things off your plate that you wouldn't want to do anyway. Like my emails are. If I write my email and it writes my email, night and day difference, right? I look like a professional press secretary. It's good enough, but I use like 5 words, it uses 50. And they're actually all very poignant words. So I don't necessarily tie the two together, because Web3 and AI are kind of two totally different things. To me, it's like a doorway though, that provides a very interesting palette for when they do get to the other side of it. What Web3 is going to do is it's going to protect odd ass AI from getting crazy. It's going to be like the parent that comes in and says, hey, here's some rules, here's some smart contracts. These are autonomously built based on prompts. You don't want to fuck up your company. Now we're going to put in a ledger that keeps the AI iterations online and make sure that those iterations don't get out of bounds. Every company is going to need Web3 in order to make AI not lose its fucking mind.
Yeah. Keeping checks and balances on what's being put out there.
This is something I've thought a lot about, right? Because it's like even with XYZ, it's like we have members who are like, why are you guys, should we do this AI thing? Why are we just hopping on the latest trend? And, number one, I think we talked about it earlier, which is like, it's all about the future of where companies and marketing are headed. And they're two distinct technologies. But as Sean just alluded to, you can't have one without the other. There's no question. It's not an opinion. It's a fact that as a world, we're moving towards an increasingly digital world. That doesn't mean we don't have physical connection. We're still going to want physical connection and to meet people IRL. However, more and more of our lives allow people to be digital nomads, allow people to work from anywhere in the world on their computer. Then when Apple Vision comes out and the Ready Player One world will eventually happen, that's a hardware question. So that'll happen eventually, right? But as we move in this increasingly digitized world, where we live more and more of our lives in this digital world. By the way, I mean, I was looking at a graph the other day of smartphone usage over just, and the amount of time we spend on our phones and on the internet every year. It just keeps going up. Doesn't matter. Video games, smartphones, internet, AR, VR, whatever you're using, we spend more and more of our time there. And with AI, it's early for sure. I think there's a lot of hype, and we're probably going to have another boom and bust cycle, just like we did with crypto and any new emerging technology. But what gets exciting about all this, well, and scary, is as you just alluded to, Julian, and I think Sean as well, like as AI allows more content to be created and as more endless amounts of digital shit gets produced, if only there was a trustless way to verify that things were real, or smart contracts, like Sean said, things that actually like create that order. So I think right now they are very much separate technologies, but at a certain point they need to come together because you can't really have one without the other.
No, really well said. And I think that even helps me like wrap my head around it too, because they're both under the bucket of emerging technologies, as we keep calling it, but they're used very differently. But like, at what point are they codependent on each other, or can one not live without the other?
Why do you think CBDC is sitting there poised and ready to roll? Because one day AI is gonna be a bold prediction. AI is gonna run through and wipe out the freaking banking system, and whoever has it will be sitting on all the currency. And they'll have to reset the entire currency ecosystem using something else in order to then put cash or whatever currency back in the hands of every individual across the globe. And when that happens, it'll actually be currency built off of energy that will require a different ledger for that to actually happen.
That's a big claim.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around all that. We'll go right into rapid fire real quick, but actually, Sean, I want to give listeners kind of a sneak peek on, what they can expect to see from Myosin as an entity over the next coming months. What gets you most excited, I guess, across both sides?
A lot of the product development that we're getting into, we had a great conversation today around, what makes us different is the way that we activate people, protocols, and products, right? And in that window of looking at people, it's where we have the ability to galvanize communities like no other. Imagine taking that as a media channel and putting it into normal traditional media. Like we have a whole other way of activating media at this point using community and galvanizing those communities in a meaningful way. So we can take that as we're building out products associated with it. We're going to be coming with a different media channel that nobody's ever seen before. So excited about that. Being able to activate that using AI tools that have boundaries on them. The good thing about us is that we're building boundaries on the tools that we have. Therefore, they don't ever get outside of the bounds of what they're supposed to be, because we understand the core of having Web3 and foundational ledgers actually built to actually drive this other product adoption in a meaningful way. On top of all that, a lot of the products that we're going to be pulling into the marketplace are all built off of needs of the market and off of needs of what we're seeing that are in that Web 2.5 space, and being a super bridge from traditional brands to these new brands. And if the bold prediction happens, right, and something crazy did take place, how are we going to transact? We're going to have transact using some kind of currency. And if that happens, everybody's actually going to have marketing lenses that actually path through a different way of executing. It's going to be a totally different ballgame. And we are well poised for that, to be able to catch that ball when it comes. Those are the things I'm most excited about, raising some pool capital internally. We're going to have some awesome, growth trajectories that are coming out of it. So I would just say, hold your horses and you'll see what happens. It's going to be a wild next 12 months.
It's going to be an exciting time. We're building in the bear, we're growing, we're scaling, and worlds collide, and we're going to do some big things. I'm pumped. All right, Let's jump into rapid fire questions. What are you most bullish on outside of Myosin in Web3?
I mean, there's this one project called Incubata. I don't know if you've heard of it before. Love that project. How they're actually taking a portion of the actual token of the currency and then driving into AI innovation and startups associated with it. So it's kind of like a cool bridge between both sides. So really like where that project's headed. Thrown a little bit into it. So it's been cool to watch.
Love it. All right. We'll put it in the show notes later.
Next one, biggest professional learning over the past 12 months.
I'm a weird bird. It's probably going to be just not really a professional learning, but it's driven professional outcomes. You are your own best guru. Listen to yourself. Oftentimes when we listen to other people's noise, we end up doing the thing that they would do and not the thing that we would do. And finding that aspect of stillness within yourself to be able to actually find the truth and executing starts to create significantly better outcomes than I was doing when I was following somebody else's playbook. So that's a process. And most people say you have to go through age to find it, but literally these answers are bombarding you every day. It's almost like, you get a good thought, then you second guess the thought, then you end up in the wrong fucking thing. For me, it's like, but if you activate on that thought and you really are in your heart space and you're not moving out of fear, you're moving out of love, things really start to actually turn out really magical for you. So, I've been riding that wave for the last, year-ish, and it's actually made a huge change in the outcomes in my life and what I'm able to receive because of it.
I freaking love that. That's Sean's special sauce. This is special magic, and I'm delighted that we're able to share this on the pod so people can get a taste of it. The next one, if you had $1 million just airdropped right into your wallet, bank account, what would you go build in Web3 today?
I would build a system that allows for intentional, truth-based thoughts to be able to exist without the feeling and need for censorship, then turning back around and then building out the aspect of accountability that then pulls like-minded individuals. This sounds like social media platform, but that pulls like-minded individuals together, but in a true vulnerable environment. Like what I find in social is not very vulnerable. Like it's a lot of like bullying and picking on, only because we create that. And that the actual tool itself heightens the awareness of an individual so that they can truly get in their heart space and then learn something in those environments that they never knew before. I feel like it's in front of us all the time, but it hasn't happened in a space that doesn't take advantage of somebody. There's not a purity to it. It's seemingly always for something else's best interest. And I know $1 million probably doesn't take it that far. This would be more like $1 billion, Blake. But
yeah. That's why I was like, I don't know if $1 million's enough for Sean here, but we'll just keep it at $1 million.
Yeah. But it starts to give you your instructions for life. It starts to help you open up yourself. It starts to help you be able to look at all of the different garbage and things that you do on your phone and the way that you communicate, the words that you use. And it starts to actually put you in a space of empowerment and receiving the gift that you are to the world.
The way I'm like framing this or thinking about it as Sean describes it, it's like this is like Web3 wellness, although that's not the externally facing thing, but that's really what we're talking about here, which is like using smart contracts and using immutability and trustlessness, which I know are buzzwords, but in this case, like can be unlocked, right? So this whole idea of accountability and like you either do it or you don't, you can actually do that. Like using this technology, you can put your words into the universe and it's there forever. Like, and people are going to hold you accountable to it. So that's really interesting.
Okay. And then the last one is, what are your craziest predictions in Web3 for end of year 2023 or maybe early 2024?
Well, it's definitely not AI goes nuts.
AI takes over the world.
That's like a down the road. I mean, who knows? That may never happen. We would have to create that for it to happen. But market will come back. I would say that it's not going to come back probably fully until the next election cycle, more than likely. Interest rates will have to shift. People have to become a little bit more risky, things along those lines. But there will start to be things where individuals understand there's a need for this tied to this whole AI revolution or evolution. And that will put a need for this whole blockchain ecosystem and Web3 ecosystem to rise up a little bit more than it has. And then all of these players that are building are really going to put out really good products. You'll see the next Google of this, the next Meta of this, but it'll be something built off of true intentions, because in this space of Web3, you can't fake it anymore. When you fake it, you see what happens, right? There's no faking it. And it's like the truth of your intention comes to life significantly faster than what capital markets have allowed for. And so I'm truly excited to see that start to exacerbate itself toward the end of the year and watching these projects start to gain real steam and momentum.
Like this thing called Myosin.
There you go.
There we go.
Keep plugging it.
Yeah.
I'll show a couple things. So, IO, if there's, you're looking to buy media, you're looking to accelerate your brand, need a Shopify site, changing the way you communicate, whatever it might be, that's our cup of tea. But the only thing is we work with people that learn to love themselves or that are in the process of doing it. So it's kind of an interesting thing for us because, we don't want to be in counseling sessions with our clients. I don't mind it for a little while, but it's one of those things where if you don't believe in your thing, we can't believe in it for you. And then at which point the thing collapses. I've seen it too many times. So there's that. And then I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it there. I could go down all this other stuff that I do, but I'm going to leave it there for now because otherwise we'll be here for another 30 minutes.
And then where can people find you, Sean? Like if they want to follow you or get in touch with you, what's the best method?
They can, there's Instagram. You can go on that. It's I have an interesting Instagram page. If you get there, you'll be on a hell of a ride. But it's Abundance 10,000. People name you an abundance alchemist. That's the other thing I was going to show, but I'm not going to go down that path. LinkedIn, just go to Sean Clayton. Look for it there. I post more stuff about this world. So if you want to stay out of the red pill lane, just go there. And that's that.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for the time and the extra time. Truly such a pleasure getting to know you and your awesome background, very unique and clearly amazing what you've done and built over the last few years. And excited to see what's to come in the next few months for Myosin.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for taking the time. A lot of love.
Thanks so much. And this is, by the way, this is the last episode of this current season. So this is a little go team. We did it.
Yeah.
Grand finale.
Yeah. Grand finale. Great way to end. All right. Well, thanks so much, Sean. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a part of this whole journey, and excited to see what we cook up next. So
thank you guys. I love you all.
Yeah. Much love. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
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 We hope you enjoyed this episode of W3G. If you'd like to learn more about Web3 marketing, please visit myosin.xyz and subscribe to our newsletter to get started.
And if you're a fan of the show, please be sure to show your support by subscribing and leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.